Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're back in War Thunder and it's time to talk about the repair cost and multipliers changes. We already talked about how influential multipliers are and why they should be taken into account with the repair cost changes. Now today we're going to go through the French repair changes and basically go through my opinions on them and all of that. The reason why we're starting from bottom to top instead of starting with the US, we are starting with France, is because France is straight up wackadoo. I don't really know what's going on with some of these vehicles, mainly not the ones that people are generally talking about. I can kind of understand those changes, but there's some other ones where it's like, holy hell kind of thing. Well, anyway, just remember that the majority of these repair costs, if not all of these repair costs, are pretty much done by equation. You can tell this by the amounts which some of these things change. There is no way that a human would come in and look at the system and go, the F6F5N needs to change by 9 silver lions. So understand that there are some equations or algorithms or something behind this which are changing them. So therefore they are based off information through the game, probably player statistics, and therefore certain players doing incredibly well in vehicles can really change how, you know, the repair costs change for these vehicles. So understand that players can have a massive effect on how these change. This does mean that for the average player, it can really annihilate some vehicles, but it also can bring some vehicles back, which generally aren't used that much. So it depends, you know, how you look at this. It depends how you look at this, right? So if you look at it from a positive point of view, you basically say, well, the meta vehicles are going to increase in price, so hopefully less people play them, therefore more people play other stuff. If you look at it from the cynical point of view, then you see it as only the really good people now are going to play the meta vehicles and stomp everyone else. Both are valid and both will happen, so it's just working out which side of the fence do you sit on, the glass half full, glass half empty. So yeah, let's get started with France and talk about their repair changes, because there's some absolute gems in this. So the first one that I want to bring up, and I'm not going to go through them all, I'm just going to go through the ones that I find interesting, is the VB1002. Now, the VB1002, which is right here, the VB1002, is now at 10,000 repair. Now, it was at 9,000 before, so it was still pretty high, but it's now at 10,000 and fully upgraded. It is now sat at 12,753 SL to repair. Now, it does have a really high reward thing on it, 3.7, which means that it has a 555% Silver Lions booster if you have premium as well. But it's just insane to me that this thing has a repair cost of that. The VB10 is a good aircraft, you know, when it's fully upgraded. The problem is getting it fully upgraded can be an absolute arse, and it's not something which is doing really well in... it's not something that is doing really well in ground forces, because it's not as if it has a ton of secondary ordnance. So I'm just kind of surprised that this thing has such a high repair cost. This thing has a higher repair cost than I think all of the American jets, which is just kind of crazy. Well, maybe not the F2. But a lot of these aircraft did get actually increased, but they're still lower than the VB. It's really odd to me. But yeah, it's got a high multiplier. Basically, the best case scenario is a low repair cost and a high multiplier, because this means that because your repair cost is low, you won't have to pay a lot when you die, but if you have a high multiplier, the more actions you do in a battle, the more you're going to get rewarded SL-wise. So those are the two things. So if a repair cost goes up, but also a multiplier goes up, that's an okay thing. You've just got to make sure to do more in the battle. You know, it's more tailored towards people who are above average, but I still think that's okay, you know, especially at the higher echelons. I just thought the VB1002 being at 10k when we look at some other nations is kind of crazy. The next one is the Origin, or the MD450B. This goes up by 2,000 to 9,198. Not as much as the VB, but it's still gone up by quite a lot. Now, this has to be, put into context because the rewards multiplier was also increased from 2.9 to 3.6. So you now have the ability to make more money in your Oruja. But on top of this, you also have the issue where if you don't do as well in battles, you probably will, you obviously will have a higher repair cost than before. This plane has benefited a lot with being dropped to 7.7. The unfortunate thing that a lot of these French jets had when they were put into the game is they were sat at 8.0, and what this meant was they were just fodder for the 9.0 machines. So since this is 7.7, it is usable. It is not the best vehicle out there, but it is at least serviceable and fun to fly, in my opinion. If you've never flown the French jets, I would say give it a go. I personally, as you can see, use the Radeon and the Vautour, and understand that pretty soon we're probably going to get some form of supersonic jet for France, so it might be worth, actually grinding out these. I mean, when you look at the nations which really pushed into the supersonic era, you pretty much got the Soviets, the Americans, the British, and then the French. The Italians kind of did, the Japanese also kind of did, until they just used a bunch of American stuff, and the Germans, obviously because of their situation, didn't really. So, yeah, I think France after Germany, for me, would be a bet for a supersonic aircraft, especially with all of the jets supersonic that they would be able to make. The next one to point out is the MD-452-2A. That's actually gone down by 1,300, this machine here, but it is also 9.0. And the difference between the Origin and the MD-452-A, in my opinion, is not very large, and therefore they've got to try and not force people, but give people a reason to use the Mystère, and a good reason is to make silver lines, at top tier, you do want to make silver lines. It's not always something that you're focused on, but it is something that is always in the back of your head, especially when it comes to ground vehicles. With air vehicles, they've made it a lot easier to make silver lines, but it's still something that you've got to think about as you go along. The next one is that the F8 F1B goes up, which is kind of surprising to me. It might just be a playstyle thing, but I really don't like the F8 F1B. If it's doing well, fair enough, but I always just get annihilated in it. It's really good as a prop against jets, but against other props, it just feels like it is way too heavy, and always has. Even the first Bearcat feels like that sometimes. 84 goes up, not a surprise. The ability to make silver lines in the 84 is very high, and I've seen a lot of people in ground forces and also where realistic do really well in it, just going after AI ground targets. So it's not surprising to me that that's going to gradually go up. The F-84 also goes up, but once again, we've got to put it in a context here. This thing goes up by 2,970, which is quite a lot, but also its reward went from like 2.8 to 3.6. So you're getting a lot more of a multiplier on your reward, but your repair cost is going up. So the main thing you've got to realize here is, once again, if you do exactly the same as you did before, when it comes to how well you did in a game, you're going to get 0.8% or 0.8 multiplier more silver lines than you did before, which can be a lot in this circumstance. So that is something to think about with this. So even though it's gone up, it's not necessarily a bad thing. The Leo 451 is going down by 1,000, the late one, and to be honest, I don't really know why. It's basically the same as the 451 early. There isn't really a difference between them. You basically just have the extra guns in the turret, which is, right here. And now seeing it as actually just higher than the early one is fair enough. It basically brings them into line, but it's just kind of odd because I didn't think this thing had issues with making silver lines. I don't think any of the French bombers have issues with silver lines. They have a pretty good multiplier on them, and on top of this, I don't think the repair cost is that high. especially when we compare it to other stuff. It's just, I suppose it is a bit weird that this has a higher repair cost than the MB175, and also this has such a low repair cost, so maybe that might be why they're just trying to balance it out through the BRs, but overall it won't make that much of a difference. You'll still make as much money as you did before. The Vautour has actually gone down. The 2A has gone down by quite a lot, 2,000, and let's just make sure if the multiplier has changed. The multiplier has also gone down by only 0.2 though, so it's not as much of a change as the other jets. The 2B has stayed the same on its multiplier, so this thing has lost, 2,000 repair cost, the 2A, which is the one with the guns, but just understand as well, it also has lost some of its percentage reward. So it's probably, you're actually probably in the money on this one, just because the reward wasn't lessened by that much, and the repair was lessened by, well, let's just say 2,000 out of 12,000, right? So that's, what, 1,000 out of 6,000, 1 out of 6, so 15% around, so maybe 13, 14%, and it's only going down by 0.2. That's a pretty good deal. So the Vautour will be more profitable to play now, especially if you do it in its normal way. The NC900 has still got quite a high repair cost, but I suppose people don't really mind because it is a premium, so you can make that back easy. Now we go into Bizarro World, because as we talked about with a lot of these ones, a lot of the French ones, they have pretty good multipliers on them, so the money that you're losing or gaining, they're normally balanced, in the multipliers. The ground forces are just not. Like, the ground forces multipliers hardly ever change compared to the plane ones. So what we have is a situation where these machines are just going higher and higher and higher, and there isn't more opportunity to make any SL. So to give you an example, the Lorraine 40T, they have upped its BR to 7.3, mainly thanks to the penetration changes, and I just want to remind everyone was calling the thing OP, like, for literally months, right? And then when they put it up in BR, and then when they put it in repair cost, all I hear is, why have they done that? Could we please remember a week ago, where people were claiming, because of the new Demar formula being used, and because of all of the, the reload and the speed of it, just remember that, please don't have such a short-term memory. So, yeah, it's the Lorraine 40T goes up by 3,600, so it's nearly at 20 grand now, which is very high. But this would be okay if a multiplier change was also in order, because you could say, well, it's a very good vehicle, you would expect that a good player would do really well in it and therefore make more silver lions, and you put the multiplier higher in there, so it's kind of a risk-reward vehicle, right? Well, let's have a look, shall we? Let's see if they actually changed the damn thing. And the answer is no, they didn't. The multiplier is ridiculously low. You know how we talked about this is the biggest issue with ground forces, right? So the VB1002, it's a rank 4 vehicle, 4.3. It's got a 3.7 multiplier on it. If we go and find something which is more similar to the Lorraine's BR, 7.3, you can see it has a 3.2 reward on it, right? 3.2, pretty high. Let's go for something else, just to give a bit of context. 6.3, so 3.7 on that. ME163, 3.7, it's quite high for these jets, yeah? Let's go for Britain, just to give some more context. Meteor, 3.7, and then 3.1. Why is it that when it comes to ground, this thing is at 1.5? 1.5. That's less than half of the aircraft at its tier. That's and its BR now. And it's the same across the board. These all have 1.5, 1.2 even reward. And this is the reason why these are not profitable. This is the reason why top tier stuff is not profitable as well. We'll get onto the Abrams, when we talk about the US, but I'll bring it up here. The Abrams, 1.5 reward per action. 1.5. The other stuff has 3.7. 3.7. Even if we look at Fleet, right? Fleet, 1.5 as well. This is why 1.2 on the Clemson, my god. But this is why we talk about how in Air Forces it's profitable to play Silver Lions wise. That's why a lot of people who play a lot of Air Forces, you know, they have a lot of Lions, right? I have 25 million Lions. I've never put any gold into Lions. I've never put any gold into research. I've only ever used gold to buy premium and also buy special like event premiums, right? So with that, I've never had an issue with Silver Lions, and that's because I play a lot of aircraft. But I can understand when you look at the reward multipliers why people have issues with ground forces, because it's so much harder to make money in these damn things because of the fact that your rewards multipliers are so low. So with all of the changes to like rank 4 for France, you know, these would be justified if the multipliers go up, but they don't. So instead what you have is just a ton of crazy expensive vehicles now at rank 4 for France. And yes, you can argue that a lot of them are meta. You know, the Lorraine 40T is a meta vehicle, but its max repair cost, fully upgraded for me, is 24,000. 24,000! How the hell am I supposed to make that back? Even with premium running. I mean, yes, the common argument is don't get shot, don't die. It's a really good tank, so you shouldn't die. Fair enough, okay? Fair enough. But still, you're going to eventually die at some point. And this is a crazy repair cost. And then let's say you have a really long drawn-out battle, you bring out your other 7.0s, so you bring the AMX-50, that's another 20 grand. Another 20 grand. Maybe you run it with your 7.7s. Mine right now is 15,000 for my AMX-30. Lorraine, 6,000. That's gone up, but it's still alright. AMX-50, 6,000. You know, these are okay. But everything else, the fucking JAR 25T, 16 grand fully upgraded. This is just money loss central. But people will still play it, because it's really good. And this is the thing, right? This is the problem with trying to use repairs to balance, you know, BRs. It works to a certain extent, you know, if you go absolutely bongo crazy. And we're getting to that point with the Lorraine 40T. But it's just, it's getting to a level where there has to be a human that comes in, looks at the equation and goes, ah, that is a bit overboard. Because if you die 3 times, right, let's say you run this, the AMX-50 and the Char 25, right? So 25 plus 15, so that's 40, plus 20, so that's 60 grand worth of repairs. 60 grand. Insane. I don't think I made 60 grand in a while, but I have been playing a lot of boats, so that's probably why. Boats Arcade, I should also point out. But the thing is, 60 grand is insane, you know, and what if you lose that battle? There's no way you're going to make any money. Like, this is just a money sink. And yeah, you don't have to pay for ammo, you know, for these vehicles, because they all just have the standard really good AP and the HE round, but still, 60 grand overall, come on, that's ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. So all of these vehicles, and just remember, the AMX-30 the AMX-30, oh, what is it? The AMX-30 here has a great repair cost, because of course it's premium. But but the B2, right, and the Brennus is going up. Why is the Brennus going up? The Brennus is not very good. Who's been playing the Brennus? I'd like to talk to you. I'd like to pick your brain. Because bloody hell is it not a good vehicle. The B2 goes up. All of these machines go up. Right? And then, once again, a bunch of other French tanks go up. All rank 4s and 5s. God damn. Why would you want to touch rank 4/rank 5 French right now? Unless you want to play the tank destroyers. Like if you want to play the CA Lorraine and the Foch, you know, they're still really profitable. But all these others with 1.5 multipliers, plus these ridiculous repair costs, like, there's no way you make money. Now, luckily, the thing is, you know, France still has good lineups outside of this, and I'm sure its top-tier lineups aren't really affected by this. I would have to have a look at the AMX-40, which I'm sure is somewhere if I can find it. Let's just see. Let's just type in 40. Oh dear. That's not good, is it? Oops. There we go. AMX-40 right there. So AMX-40, that's an okay repair cost for a top tier tank, especially one which is seen as not the best, but it's still competitive. So, you know, that's fine. That brings it in line with all the rest. But these are just insane, right? All of these up here are just crazy. The FCM as well, going up by 20. Travesty. Pyramid Head will never see the light of day again. But, my god, like, all the auto-loading tanks just got shafted in this update. And as I said, this won't stop people playing them. This will just mean that people like me, who have 25 million to burn, will play them. Right? This just means that the people who grind through France, who don't have a ton of SL, are not going to play these, because it'll literally just put them straight in the negatives. But for people like me, it's not an issue. So you are artificially creating a barrier for people who either play a lot of top tier, or people who don't have premium, or people who are just grinding through this tree and trying to play these vehicles. And yeah, once again, you could make the skill argument if you want, but that only got us so far. Because there is only it's like the ME-262s, right? So back in the day, ages ago, like we're talking like maybe 4 years at this point, maybe 5 years, maybe even 6. A lot of people were like, why is the C1A so high in BR? You know, the difference between this one and the A1A is hardly anything. You know, these machines are very similar in playstyle. There's not really a lot different to them. The reason why this one was so much higher is because certain squads took it upon themselves to prove that this was not an awful plane, and therefore played it an absolutely metric ton, right? And what this did was it raised its BR and raised its repair cost, and the rest of the community went, why the hell is this happening? This is now unplayable. But those squads kept playing it and kept doing well, and this is the issue. This is one of the problems when if you listen to like really high-tiered players constantly about your game, because then you'll get situations like this. Now with France, that's kind of happening again, where you're just going to set up a situation where only the best of the best are going to play these because they're going to still be able to make a profit, or they're just not going to be bothered about the profits that they lose. I think personally that these need to be taken down in the context of a whole lineup. I understand an individual tank being this high. I do not understand 60 grand overall, right? And even if you want to be generous, right? Let's say we run the AMX-30, let's say we run the Surbassé, let's say we run like the AMX-30 DCA. Even then, you know, 15, that's what, 23, and then 5, so 28k just for this lineup, and this is nowhere near fully upgraded. This could be a lot worse. That's incredibly high for what it is. So I think there's some needs to be some human readjusting here instead of just instead of just some equation, because it obviously with every equation it will have faults, and this is one of them. The AMX-10RC goes down though, which is good. Hopefully this means more people will play that. I haven't seen any of them on the battlefield, and I think that's just because it's quite a large target, and also it has the inherent issue of not having a stabilizer at that high BR. And of course the Sierra Lorraine, with its BR increase, also gets an increase in repair, but it's not very high. I tell you what, how about this as a compromise? So if you want to promote it, so you want people to understand the risk-reward idea. So the risk is if you die early in the French, rank 4 vehicles, then you lose a bunch of money. But if you do well, you are rewarded with a lot of money. Why not just increase the reward multipliers on these vehicles in relation to their rewards? Now, yes, this will mean that a lot of experienced players will flock to them, and yes, they are some of the best vehicles at their BR because of the 4-second reload, because of the 6.7-second reload, all of this stuff. But it means that you will get the average player who will work hard to be able to do well in these, to be able to get, the bonuses, to be able to break even, do that as well, which I think is important. These should not become just elite tanks that only elite players use, high squadron players use, and I hope that isn't the case. But right now, it really is looking like it, isn't it? Everything else, though, it's not that much of a change, really. There's not really much else to talk about. So, overall, Most of the changes I generally agree with when it comes to the air stuff. When it comes to the ground stuff, it's just really surprising. Well, actually, is it? Is it really that surprising that this is the case? Maybe not, because they are really good vehicles, but there has to definitely be some kind of check and balance here, in my opinion. Anyway, next time we'll have a look at another nation. I'll catch you then.